sign in. We had to set up a little different this afternoon. So I'm going to give them about 2 minutes.
Thank you. Do we have who the person is who's appearing by phone?
No, we do not, Laura. I'll go ahead and do that for you.
Yes, that private caller.
Yes.
Is a phone bridge for the public speakers or for the public to call in. You will always see that private call as long as we have the phone bridge up and running.
Okay, that's the phone bridge, Raymond? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So Laura, that is the phone bridge. With the extension of our virtual meeting, what we've had to do with the executive order, we needed to also set up a separate room. So if anyone from the public wanted to come in to speak, they will have the opportunity, and that was placed in the notice that went out to make the public aware of this meeting. That is the room to where Diane is located in now. And I think on our screen is identified as the public speaker room D. And as Raymond indicated, we also have a phone line. So this is putting us in compliance to the addendum of the executive order saying that virtual meetings can be extended until October the 31st with putting these pieces in place.
Thank you very much.
So that's where we are, Laura. And then, of course, we do apologize with the executive order and these new addendums and things that needed to take place because of the extension of the virtual meetings. I think there are a little bit of a hiccup as well with the agenda or what have you. But we got one piece fixed, and then we had some errors on the other side. But I think all the pieces eventually came. All the pieces came together. So if there is not an addendum or an extension to the current executive order saying that virtual meetings must end come October 31st, then our November meeting, of course, will then be in public. Face to face. But at that time, things changes. So we will address that when that time comes. We will just wait and see if the governor would release another executive order pertaining to any of our meetings that are sunshine, which will be all of our advisories. So with all that being said, Laura, I'm going to mute and I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Just to clarify, so the executive order goes through the end of October, so our November meeting might be in person if that's not extended?
Yes.
Okay, so if any of us have concerns about meeting in person, do we need to send that to you or how should we work with that?
Well, once this meeting is tonight, I guess you and I will let you and I talk outside of this meeting to figure out what that could look like, because we would need to get with our IT team. So I would need to get with IT and look at all those pieces to see what it is that we need to do to make those accommodations. And then we will send it out, send a group, send the correspondence out to the group in regards to if they need to join virtually, then IT will give us the instructions and everything on how to send those, all the pieces that we would need, because it will be a process.
Thank you. Sounds good.
So after this meeting, Laura, if you would just call, you normally would talk with Diane, just call Diane, and then we will work through those pieces with IT and then notify the group in writing.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Thanks, Laura. But we definitely are here to accommodate. Laura, at this time, I'm going to mute and officially call this meeting to order. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. And as the meeting, as Dr. Sheffield just said, is called to order at 5:36. And I am double checking whether or not we have a quorum. I'm not sure that we do. Do you, Diane, see that we do?
I don't just yet, no.
Okay, so in light of that, we are going to checking how many people we have. I think I see Carlos, you're here, but I think your list is unknown.
Laura, it looks like just like 3 people is all I count.
Right, that's what I'm seeing as well. Okay.
So we're far from that.
It's just we have 12 people on, which I appreciate that everyone's here for the presentation, and sorry to see that we don't have as many people here for...
Who's the private caller?
The private caller is for public speakers who are calling in.
Yes. And Diane, would you go ahead and note, Laura, I think Diane did receive correspondence from 2, I think, that were going to be absent. So Diane, you may want to go ahead and make notification of that now.
I do. Randy and Miss Van Arsdale. So I only have 4 that I've accounted for on the committee right now.
Okay.
Who's the 4th? I only see 3.
I have Miss Dr. Diaz, Chairman Fellman, Charmaine Postel, and Nancy Reese.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, Nancy.
Yes, you're correct.
Oh, I saw Nancy's face earlier, but I don't see her name. And so
Yeah, let me text Nancy. She came on once, then twice, and now she's not on at all. So there's only 3 present at this point. Let me text Nancy right away and see if there's problems with her internet.
Thank you, June.
Okay, so, well, even with Nancy's presence, we won't have enough of a quorum we will not have a quorum to be able to approve the minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Hi, Nancy. Move forward with the opportunity for public comment. And do we have any public comment, whether anyone is in the physical room or on the phone? Okay, I take it by the quiet that there is no public comment currently. So, Dr. Sheffield, if we could go forward with with your update.
Again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Academic Advisory Committee meeting. And I do apologize. I think there were some hiccups in regards to the notification. Bruce, our attorney with General Counsel, he was heavy on us in regards to some modifications that we needed to make certain that we were operating within the sunshine to where we was providing a space for the public to come and to meet and to speak if they needed to in person. So we were heavily trying to get that right in. And with all this technology, what have you, I do appreciate you guys, everyone coming on this afternoon. We have, since our last meeting, have had quite a bit that's been going on in this constant, in our continuous space of this distance learning, where we are now distance learning as well as brick and mortar. Since our last meeting, we had our students to where they returned. Some of them returned actually to our campuses. And I could tell you, I did have an opportunity to visit some of our campuses when our students returned, those that returned to brick and mortar. And I have to say, for the most part, we do have the majority of our students that are continuing in this distance space. And what we here as a district have realized is that we do need to begin, and Keith will talk a little bit more tonight. I asked him to join us because he will be talking around the Make Your Choice 2.0. Because as we've opened up through distance learning as well as brick and mortar, what we've realized is that we do need to work with our families and giving them and asking them to make a commitment in regards to if their child is going to remain brick and mortar or in that distance learning space. And the reason for that is to try to establish some form of enrollment stabilization. Having that stabilization is just going to be more conducive for the student, not only the student, but most importantly, that teacher as well. What we've seen is that, we'll have our students one day they're in brick and mortar, the next day they may decide to go to distance learning. And we know that that just can, in regards to instructing and educating our students and keeping their best interests to heart, to where it's just not educationally sound. And when we're seeing that we have more of our students in this distance learning space, and as well as working with our teachers, those that are working remotely or those that are in need of working remotely and so forth. We want to do our best in regards to trying to see how we can better align our teachers with our students and so on. But I'm not going to get into the specifics as it pertains around, that Making Your Choice 2.0 and what that will look like. You're going to hear a lot of that this afternoon from Keith. So my comments are going to be short because we have some really hard conversations as it pertains to bringing our students back and trying to stabilize, our system for our students and for our teachers, but most importantly around our contact tracing. Jay is on tonight. I tell you, Jay has just done an Hercules effort, a job there in working with the healthcare district and the Department of Health because Dr. Smith, our healthcare specialist for the district, actually, she became ill and she's been out. And I cannot thank Dr. Alonzo and Dr. Andrick and Dr. Shabar. Those have been our major, individual of contact for both the healthcare district and the Department of Health in working with us and just getting it right and setting up some very strict protocol and processes around this contact tracing and how we are dealing with, should a student the staff present what we called these COVID-like symptoms. We're not saying that they are positive, but we're saying symptoms, and then there are things that we have in place. So I want Jay to really take some time and explain to you what that looks like, because you've been hearing a lot in terms of in the media as it pertains to, what we're doing as a district around this COVID-19 protocol, around the dashboard, as well as our students returning to brick and mortar. But what I can tell you is that we've gotten more negative press than good. And there are some great things that are happening within our schools. And what we've realized is that if we don't tell our story, then we allow for individuals to tell it for us. And they tend not to tell all aspects of the work that is indeed being done. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I want you to show me a district in this country that are going through what we're going through in this pandemic that have this right. And we definitely will make our way there to go and visit. Our students have been heavily engaged in teachers in regards to, the teaching and learning. We are moving into those aspects because as much as we want to try to get back to some normalcy, we know nothing is normal, but we do want to try to talk a lot around that teaching and learning and do our very best with that. On this coming Thursday, I encourage you to join in if you're on social media. If you're not, I'm sure it will also be on the district's webpage to where ESC, ELL, myself, Diana Fetterman, where we're going to be doing a Facebook Live for our families, just talk about, and answer questions in regards to some ongoing concerns that they may have. June and Dr. Mary Claire Messinik with the Department of Health, Behavioral Health, and Keith, they did a Facebook Live a few weeks ago. So, we're just out there just doing our best and trying to continue to be as transparent as we possibly can with our communities in terms of this whole pandemic, the whole COVID-19, and this unfortunate situation that we are currently in. We've held PLA principal, our first Principal Leadership Academy this past Thursday. Generally our principals are out on one full day for a month to go through their professional development. We held it this past Thursday. It was virtual. We're still not meeting in an open space as of yet. We split that meeting up to where we had our elementary principals in the morning and then our secondary principals were in the afternoon. It was definitely a great day in regards to just working with our principals, going through those academic instructional pieces, as well as the operational side of the house. I just ask you to understand that, again, there is no playbook for this, and we are definitely open to the constructive feedback that we're getting. We tell people all the time, we appreciate, hearing in regards to how well things are going, but what's important to us is to gather the feedback for those areas in which we need to be improving on and looking at, because we do want to get it right. So we're constantly, adapting, constantly making changes. June is going to talk tonight about the policy 5.36. That is the policy around our student COVID policy. It also ties into our student code of conduct. So just from me talking to you that overview around tonight, around the Make Your Choice 2.0, where we are going now, parents are making their decisions. Many of them are, still have some concerns. They still have questions around making those decisions, but with the understanding that the reason that we need a decision to be made in regards to whether or not their child is going to remain on distance or return to brick and mortar is to stabilize the instructional learning for their child and to also help with the teachers and to eliminate as much as of the simultaneously teaching as we possibly could. So at this point, I'm going to wrap it up. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit more in regards to some other unique pieces that we have going on, within the district. But it's important that you hear from the group that I asked to join us this evening around the work in this current space. So at this time, Jay, I'm going to, June, I think I would go and start with Jay with the contact tracing piece. And then after Jay goes through the contact tracing piece, then I'm going to ask June to then come with that policy 5.326, which is the student COVID policy, and then that student code of conduct, because it all goes together. But I think it will flow better, Jay, if you go with what that student COVID, what that student contact tracing piece looks like. And Jay, you're probably going to end up, and I don't know if you have it in your conversation, but around the testing that we're beginning to receive that could be taking place on our campuses. So I'll turn it over to Jay.
Certainly. Ms. Wood, are you presenting the PowerPoint or do you want me to? How would you like to see that done?
If you can present, that would be great.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Can you all see that?
Not yet, Jay.
Okay.
Do you need me to present?
Yeah, it's not now?
Mm-mm.
Not yet.
Doc, there's only 3 slides.
Okay, I have it, Jay. I will pull it up.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay,
why
that's okay.
not doing it on there. Sorry, guys. I'll start. Hi, I'm Jay Bogus, Assistant Superintendent for Choice and Innovation. Spoken to you once before, but on choice and kind of direction of career and tech ed and some other fascinating aspects. But today we're talking on COVID, and kind of wanted to start with a historical perspective of where we ended in March and kind of how far we've come just in a very short amount of time. In March, we've always had a relationship with the healthcare district. They serve in 170 of our schools as our school nurses. And the Department of Health, thank you, Dr. Sheffield. And the Department of Health has always been an entity interplaying with the school district and the healthcare district. We're very unique here in Palm Beach County to have the opportunity to have a healthcare district and a healthcare district nurse on 170 of our facilities. But when March came and COVID really came and impacted our world, there was a hard line drawn in the sand between what the school nurse would do on our campuses and what they would not do. And really, we were left with the hard conversation around who takes on COVID. And I can tell you, when we went to hiatus back in March and flipped to distance learning and, the COVID pandemic set in, we were left with this hard conversation question of who's going to handle and deal with COVID. The healthcare district at that time said, even though they've dealt with communicable diseases in the past, they were not equipped nor were they ready to take on COVID in March. Fast forward to July. July comes and we're prepping to come back into what the new school year is going to look like. Multiple players have done what they needed to for distance learning, and the question still was raised, how are we going to handle the COVID aspect when identified as COVID positive on our campuses? Started conversations with the healthcare district, and it really led to that those nurses were furloughed. So we were walking into August with 0 nurses. They had been allocated to places like the ballpark of the Palm Beaches. They've been contracted elsewhere. And really, we're pressed with a hard decision point on what that was going to look like. To date, we have a full-time nurse in nearly all 170, and there's 13 left that are part-time in our schools. And I say 170 because those are the healthcare district nurses. We also contract with all Metro, and we've even got some of our own interplaying the rest. But I wanted to give you the historical perspective to show like where we had started in March, kind of even where we were in the summer, and kind of how that relationship has continued to blossom to make sure that even in a shortage of nurses, we've got every campus fulfilled with either an interim or a part-time, and in most, if not 90% of our cases at this point, we've got a full-time nurse on our campus. When we start to look at COVID protocol, it's our way, and what we're trying to do in the best way possible is to build trust and transparency within our communities from all stakeholders. And so as we start to walk through what these COVID protocols look like, you're going to see that as part of an emphasis and even part of a revision process we saw within the first 2 weeks. I'm going to detail out, there's 9 steps that you're going to see that our principal follows when we have a confirmed positive COVID case on our campuses. In addition, I had Ms. Wood attach a algorithm or workflow that we've built in partnership with the Department of Health and the healthcare district. And that's going to detail out everything from the nurse's responsibility to the administration's responsibility, all the way down to DOH confirming the case and also putting out, if necessary, a quarantine notice. So, Dr. Sheffield, if I could ask you go back 1 slide, and we'll walk this team through step by step when we have a confirmed positive case or a positive case on our campus. First and foremost, we're getting all information to that school principal. They are the captain of that ship and they are the leader of that campus. So immediately, whenever we hear that there's a positive case, we say that principal needs to be notified. That could come from a parent, a student, a guardian, but we're looking to receive the positive test case. You all might not know this, but positive test cases for COVID are being sold on Craigslist as we speak. People are trying to get out of work or do whatever is necessary. But the first thing is we've got to get the confirmed test. Second piece to this step process is that we're contacting and emailing the regional instructional superintendents, and we have a COVID-19 notification that alerts HR, risk and benefits, and myself, who leads the nursing agencies for our school district. The last person is our school nurse. So between the principal and our school nurse, that's where all information is being funneled, and they are considered our point of contacts. Third step in this, our school nurse steps in and immediately reports it to the Department of Health. They have a set up command center, which is the number that we're calling. So even if that nurse is called in sick or they're not available that day, our principal is stepping in and calling in the case. Here's what I know to date. Here's what I've either been seeing. Here's what I'm collecting as data collection. Principals are also notifying if there's a staff member. So it's not just students, but it's staff as well. Fourth step in this, principal is starting data collection. We as a district aren't conducting contact tracing, not our role, not our responsibility. We're doing data collection so that effective contact tracing can take place. So there's a specific contact tracing form, there's seating charts, and there's a copy of the confirmed case if received. Anything that we think that could help the contact tracer identify potential close contacts exposures, that's what we're trying to get. Next slide. Step 5 in this process centers around school community notification and ultimately getting it to what we've built as a school district dashboard. So the immediate communication that's coming out when we have a confirmed positive case is what we're calling school-wide notification. It essentially says we have a confirmed positive case at XYZ elementary school, and that contact tracing has started, that it does take a time, but to this point, we're letting you know that we do have a confirmed positive case. We are following back up with the Department of Health, and once that contact tracing process is done, there will be a second alert coming to you. But this is our immediate way for both building trust and transparency with our community, that they have up-to-date information to the best of our ability. Step 6 in this is that the contact tracing investigation engages and then confirms. In talking with Dr. Alonso, we're right around 36 to 48 hours of return time. Because it is a vetted process. They are talking to individuals, they're talking to the positive contact, they're diving deep and probing into how could this exposure been leaked beyond potentially the classroom or even the campus itself. Remember, the defined close contact is 6 feet at 15 minutes or more. So if you're within 4 feet, that's a probing question for sure, and it's going to raise a red flag. When we determine, or when the Department of Health determines that contact tracing has been vetted, they're sending out a letter to the parents of all students who are identified as a close contact within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes and have the potential to be exposed. They are the ones that are issuing the quarantine letters. I can tell you I learned this in this process, that the Department of Health is the only one that has legal authority and autonomy to issue a quarantine. The second piece to that is around self-isolation. So unless symptoms develop, there would not be any type of self-isolation. When you move to step 7, we're looking at formally notifying the principal taking the action, and anyone that wasn't defined as a close contact is then saying you can return to campus. Principals should receive this no later than 3 to 4 business days, and they're receiving the initial email about the COVID-19 case. The last piece in all of this is step 8 and 9 around the communication of the contact tracing is then completed. And then if no quarantines were issued and it's not applicable, then that student thus receives a last letter saying there was no quarantine in effect and our classrooms you're continuing on as business as usual. So these 9 steps are essentially the way that our principals are working through the workflow when we have a contracted COVID positive case on the campus. I saw some chat box questions come through.
JJ, I answered one that Laura asked about, does the principal find out from DOH versus hearing from a parent? And explain that often the DOH is a day or so behind when they get the reports from the lab. So usually it's the pattern we're seeing is we're hearing it from the parents because as soon as they get the results, they're calling the school, which is a good thing. And then we get a copy of that, as Jay mentioned, so we can get the contact tracing happening sooner.
Indeed. 2 last pieces that I think, thank you, Mr. Oswald. 2 last pieces that I know Dr. Sheffield wanted us to mention in addition to the step-by-step processes is one is the memorandum of understanding that we have with our healthcare district. Under current obligation or contractual with the healthcare district, they are only working with our students. We are currently in the process of amending that so that they would help to take on our school-based employees. I see it as a huge win for not only our community, but certainly for our district and how we're better identifying COVID-like symptoms. That then ties to what you might have seen in the news at the end of last week or beginning part of last week, that antigen testing is coming to essentially all 67 counties throughout the state of Florida. We received our antigen test in part of last week. Do we have the number that we need? No, we do not. But we do have the first shipment of antigen test, and it's for symptomatic students or school-based employees only. If you're asymptomatic, that is not the test that we're giving. It is only students that are showing COVID-like symptoms, and they would actually be able to be tested within the school clinic on site. We're working through legal on both sides of what all of that looks like, the protocols and procedures to follow, but wanted you to know that those 2 pieces, as we continue to move through COVID, I think will help expedite not only testing, but identification of potential sick students and school-based employees. So with that, Dr. Sheffield, I think I laid the groundwork on the COVID protocols. I do see one last question here.
There is, I think it's Dr. Diaz's question, then I have a question after that.
The healthcare district does not do contact tracing, only the Department of Health. And for schools, I think there's a team of 30. Is that correct, Jay?
Yeah, 26, Keith. But if you include their leadership, we're well over the 35 mark of epidemiologists, chief medical officers, the whole cadre. So yes, you're correct.
So I have a few questions. One is, what is the time that it seems to take to get from, let's say, step 1 to step, I'm trying to see where it is that the other students or staff are informed. So it's, I guess, would be, I'm not sure which step it is.
So we just changed that process last, Friday or Thursday or Friday. So that just changed so that notification would all be within a few hours, sometime with it all in the same day, the first notification out to the community that there's a case on campus and the contact tracing has begun. So it depends on what time of the day the principal finds out, but all within that day.
Okay, so and it changed on Friday?
It was last Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay.
But we didn't get notification out to principals till Thursday. So
That change was implemented on Friday then.
or Thursday if they had a case and they had their meeting earlier with us in the day. I'm trying to think what time our meetings. Secondary was in the afternoon, Glenda?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So with this change of process, have more families been notified faster?
Well, they would be. Once the school's institutionalized it, they would know faster.
Okay.
I'm
So
not sure I understand your question.
I've heard of or read of delays in being notified, and so that there were discrepancies between statistics out from the Florida Department of Health and what I saw on the school district's dashboard. And then, I realized that was a few weeks ago, but I know that there's been a problem of tracking data in Florida in general.
So you're talking apples and oranges to the Department of Health's dashboard and our dashboard. Department of Health is any case, including those kids who are in distance learning. Ours only includes kids who are brick and mortar. So it's measuring two different things. So I think that's important. I said, and the other thing that we're being cautious of, and if we're guilty of it, we are trying to protect people's HIPAA rights as we work through this process. So by no means are we trying to hide anything, but this is about how do we ensure that we're protecting everybody's rights so that we get this right. So if we're going a little slow and cautious, yes, we are, to make sure we get it right. So that's why this one change, working closely with Dr. Alonso, that she supported us alerting the brick and mortar when we hear about it and we have something to confirm that it's a case on a campus.
Okay, and what do you do for cases where there are students who are distance learning but coming in person for after-school activities?
We would have to be notified of that. We wouldn't let them on campus if we were aware of that.
Oh, well, okay.
So someone would need to tell us if they're coming on.
I had, admittedly, this is completely, what I saw posted on social media. So for whatever that's worth, which might be nothing, I had seen that there was a report of a case of a student who was distance learning but showing up to after school activities. And the child that case was counted in this school district's dashboard. But I figured since you had made that differentiation, I would ask.
Yeah, and if someone's coming just if they're not coming brick and mortar for schooling, we'd have to look at why they come in just for activities, because they should be there all day. So, which is a whole nother set of questions.
Has anyone looked at that or brought that up with principals?
Yeah, we have. So when we hear about case by case, we look into it. That's why we need to know the school and the situation so we can look into it.
Okay. So I'm not sure that point that students, if they're doing distance learning, are not supposed to be participating in after-school activities in person has been made clear to parents. And
well,
so
I guess I question why would they come just for after-school activities and not brick and mortar?
because this is hypothetically, perhaps a parent would say it's a smaller group of students and they're going to be exposed for a shorter. I can only imagine. I'm not one of those parents, so I can't come up with a reason. But that would be the only possible reason I could think of. But there are plenty of people who make decisions differently than I do, and I think that I've heard conversationally that there are people who have talked about wanting their kid to be a distance learner, but participating in sports or participating in some other after-school activity in person. So I just figured if that's the rule, then maybe we need to make sure that everyone knows it.
No, I think Laura, with social media, I mean, I wish social media would just like really, one needs to go on strike. I mean, social media. But anyway,
I hear you, but this is also just conversations I've had with friends who've had conversations with other friends, and the decisions that those second, 2 steps away from me, friends have made as to what they were doing for their students. So we're talking about people's decisions. So I just figured I would ask.
Okay, and for those students that may be participating in, so what I'm hearing from you from this conversation is that if we have students that are participating, that are distance learning and may be participating in after school activities, which is, if any, would be few, because to me, it's more of a risk, particularly playing sports, than coming to school for brick and mortar for teaching and learning, because it's contact, football, a prime example, or what have you. Is that we need to look in regards to what those safety precautions are for those students to when they're coming onto campus. Are they going through the COVID protocol, i.e. temperature checks, answering those questions, and doing the whole workups or what have you?
Right.
Is what I'm hearing. Point taken.
And if the rule is, if you're doing distance learning, you can't be on campus, then just to please let families know that.
Okay, point taken.
Yep. We'll have to look at it, because honestly, it's not, I guess we didn't predict that to be an issue.
Yeah, no,
What's required is that parents, if they test positive, they're not to be on campus. So if someone's going to campus positive, they're breaking board policy,
Correct.
which I don't know why a parent would send a kid who tests positive on a school campus to expose others. That's just...
Well, no, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying like a kid did distance learning, went to after school activities in person, and then maybe later the next day wasn't feeling well, got the COVID test, tested positive, but now in contact tracing, they should be notifying the school and who they were with at the after school activities, because that was within the time frame when they could be contagious.
So Lauren, so in that case, so if they go and they're tested positive and they're a student of ours, the Department of Health, Keith and Jay, will then notify us, and then Department of Health will then do the contact tracing with that student and family.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
And that student would be counted in the Department of Health's numbers, but not in the school district's numbers, because the kid's not a brick and mortar student?
No, if we found out after they were on a school campus, we would put it in our dashboard. But if the parent didn't tell us about it, that they were on campus and then tested positive a couple days later, then the to Glenda's point, Department of Health will pick that up through their county data. And when they do their contact tracing, when we interview that particular student and family, they're supposed to then alert anybody that needs to be alerted.
Okay.
And again, this is not perfect. We're working through all this. They're working through as they work with us. That's why each day we get a little better at how we're doing this.
Sure. And since there are new policies and processes for how this is notified to parents, and so you've shortened the time frame, is there going to be information sent out to the community to let them know that? Because I think that could help counter some of the negative press about the time frames.
You're saying a revised process to put out to the community?
If you were to say we have revised the process to address the issues that were raised, even that, so we're looking to shorten the timeframes to make sure people can be notified faster. Just that, people might feel more reassured.
Yeah, we talked to communications about it. I see what you're saying.
If they hear that you've heard the complaints and you've worked on it and you've come up with a better, faster way.
Yep.
Give you guys credit for doing that.
Yeah.
So, it's
we need to tell our story. Yep.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, but the more you get out that you've listened and you're working on it, I think more people will hear that. And just another question, am I correct that the dashboard is not updated over the weekend, or is it updated over the weekend?
it is not updated over the weekend. So whatever we confirm as positive cases on Friday at 5, we'll go and upload Friday at 11:30, and then moving through Saturday and Sunday. I'm staying in communication, but are we updating that dashboard Saturday and Sunday? No, ma'am.
Okay, so if the language of how often you update the dashboard could be updated so that it reflects that it's updated Mondays through Fridays instead of every day, I think that could be helpful. Or if you want to say it's updated every school day, but just to keep your information consistent with what you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Feldman.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, are there any other questions with our COVID, with our contact tracing? If not, at this time, I'm going to share my screen as June Issa is going to come, and we're going to now talk about the policy 5.326, which ties in to our COVID contact tracing and all those pieces in which Jay just gone over. Can you all see my screen? June, can you see?
Yeah, I can. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mine up. Okay. Thank you. Next slide. As was mentioned earlier, we have an emergency policy that is in place for our students. It's a student COVID policy that was passed on August 19th. And it is presently in revision. So what I'm going to do is go over what the policy looks like right now and what we are looking at changing and that we've already brought forward to the board. But this is what's in place for right now. So the first thing is district's safety guidelines. I'm going to just take some of the language that's actually in the policy. Students must, hold on a second, sorry, my phone is ringing. I thought I shut it off. Students must self-screen prior to reporting to school. They're not to attend school if they're ill. They need to follow revised school procedures. That's going to include all of the different procedures that the school campuses have, and it's generically written because arrival, dismissal, lunches, passing in the hallways, what direction you're walking on. Each one of our schools took a lot of time before the students arrived back on campus to put all of those procedures and protocols in place. And abide by social distancing guidelines. Students also must wear an approved facial covering at all times. We do have an accommodation process that is in the policy. So if we have a student who cannot wear a mask, there is an accommodation process that they can go through on each individual campus. If students will be enrolled in distance learning if testing positive for COVID-19 or identified by the Department of Health as an exposed close contact. Some of this is going to overlap with what Jay was just talking about, but I just want to go through what the language is. Next slide, Glenda. So the responsibilities of students and the families, they must self-report a positive test of any member of their household. They must remain home, be enrolled in distance learning. They must provide the school center with a contact tracing list to their administration. And if the student exhibits COVID-like symptoms during the school day, they'll be sent to the nurse or an isolation area to be picked up by the parent or the guardian. Next slide, Glenda. So the responsibilities of the principals, and Jay just went over this in pretty, good details, but they'll alert their supervisors. They'll also be responsible for alerting our, staff at our district staff for enhanced sanitation. They'll notify parents who's come in contact with a positive individual, and again, the distance learning. Next one, Glenda. So we have written in language in there that says consequences for non-compliance. Any student who chooses not to adhere to the district's policy regarding the wearing of facial coverings or any other aspects of this policy will have consequences as outlined in the student code of conduct and may be assigned to distance learning. I'm happy to say that we've only had a few instances, and most of those have resulted in us being able to redirect the students, but we did write in language that if we were having children who chose not to wear facial coverings or to go in the right direction or to come to the area where arrival or dismissal is allocated by a school center, we do have the opportunity to give them consequences based on our student code of conduct and also assign them to distance learning. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I think it was a week ago, we did bring forward the changes that we were looking for. Again, this is an emergency policy. It is set to sunset in November 3rd or 4th, but we are going to be bringing forward our new policy and hopefully will be adopted before this one sunsets. The new language, we deleted language regarding the wearing of any facial covering in school-related activities. There was a language in the emergency policy about band, PE, and chorus, and we removed all of that language. You just heard from Jay and from Keith about how much work we've been doing with the Department of Health and even the healthcare district, but the Department of Health. So we've revised language and really are very clear in the new policy on when and for how long students must self-isolate when testing positive for COVID-19 or exposure. There are two different timelines, a 10-day timeline, a 14-day timeline based on the circumstances of those individual students. And then the other piece that we have asked to be added to the new policy is any other student that attends a face-to-face district school that resides in the same home as the student exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms, they'll be sent home with the parent and guardian and also assigned to distance learning. So therefore, we're going to do some sit-like addresses. So if we have any individuals, it's an elementary student, we're going to look at middle school, high school students, we're going to connect them together by like addresses, and we are going to send them all home and follow the process. And that's it for me. Again, that is the language that's in our present policy, and also our language that's going to be in the revised policy. Any questions for me, Laura?
If a student tests positive while they're on campus, now that we will have these tests, where will they be while they're waiting to be picked up?
So I don't have any, Jay or Keith, I have no information regarding what we'll be doing with the new tests that are coming forward. We haven't worked with legal on that language, so either of them want to address it.
They go to
The isolation room?
isolation room. So all schools have an isolation room established, and the healthcare district has worked to provide extra training staff who may be supervising, as well as additional PPE as needed.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we move any further, because I know that was quite a bit in regards to just talking about and giving you more of an idea in regards to what that contact tracing looks like, because that's just been a lot probably of what you've been hearing as it's been coming up within our schools. And Laura, you did hit on the dashboard. And then June went over the policy that's tied to to the contact tracing as it pertains to our students. Are there any questions before we leave talking about the contact tracing and what it looks like on our campuses and next steps before we go into, this last big piece, which is talking about, stabilizing our schools where parents are now doing these surveys, committing their choices to brick and mortar or to virtual learning. And if not, then I'm going to go ahead and Keith is going to share his screen. Keith, you're muted.
I know I'm just having a little technical difficulties here. 1 second.
Hopefully it's not contagious. Sorry, Keith.
Got jokes late at night. All right. So Make Your Choice 2.0 is, as discussed earlier by Dr. Hold on. All right, so Make Your Choice 2.0 does have to do, as discussed earlier, around enrollment stabilization. Number of reasons, as discussed, that Dr. Sheffield briefly mentioned earlier, but it does allow for schools to better prepare when it comes to safety measure. One of the big things And we talked about regarding contact tracing to being able to socially distance to reduce the number of students who potentially would need to be quarantined or be exposed if someone does test positive. It helps us better prepare that for the long haul and make improvement plans. And then also the instructional models. You probably have seen a lot of board meetings where there's been a lot of discussion regarding face-to-face and distance learning, that simultaneous teaching, which is not ideal, but has become one of the challenges working through, as well as remote working. In addition to that, also you probably have seen in board meetings, we're down over 7,000 students as a district. So right now, we'll be held harmless from what we've heard for the first semester, but not necessarily the second semester when that comes around. So there's potential to start being proactive in dealing where we're seeing those bigger shortfalls to addressing those particular issues earlier on. So there's not that cliff that we may see second semester. When it comes to also the second semester, where we're asking, as of right now, parents to lock in for the second semester. We know when it comes to state testing, which at this point is on, and the DOE has said, we are going to have state tests. We need a lot of lead time as well as our accelerated coursework testing to prepare for that as a district. This gives us ample time to do that. And this process also allows for parents to still enroll in distance learning when a student does come up symptomatic or someone does test positive for COVID. In addition, the time we're giving parents plenty of time to make those decisions and time to actually experience what school is going to be like. So parents are 4 weeks in to what brick and mortar looks like. And what we've heard from a lot in the beginning is that parents didn't know what they wanted to do. They weren't sure because they wanted ample time to see what it was going to look like. So now they're seeing some of the realities, that we do have COVID cases coming up on our campuses more than we'd like to see. So some of the new realities of what school looks like. So our deadlines on Wednesday at the close of business that we're asking parents to lock in for the rest of this first semester. So the first 9 weeks, first marking period closes on November 2nd, and then on the 4th begins the second semester. So by closing this on Wednesday, that gives the schools a couple weeks to address any particular changes that might need to occur in their master board or prepare for if there is an influx of more teachers going brick and mortar to prepare their school accordingly. And this, again, would begin on Wednesday, November 4th. These changes would take in effect to the end of the semester, which is January 29th is the end of the first semester, January 29th. We've been working on communication from the central office, regional, at the school level, down to classroom teachers, where each teacher, again, making sure that parents know about this particular change. It's gotten a lot of media coverage that I'm sure you probably have seen. Second semester deadline would open up January 4th when we come back from winter break, then close Monday, January 11th. Then schools would work to do any type of changes that they need to make in their master board, remote work or not having remote work, etc. And begin Tuesday, February 2nd, which is the beginning of the second semester. A lot later than what we're used to, but with the backing up the calendar, that's the way that works out. In addition, we know there's going to be issues that come up for families, and we're working on extenuating circumstances. So basically an appeal process that will be held at the school level, where if a family has particular challenges or issues that they want to make a change in their placement, these are examples of extenuating circumstances. We would definitely look to make accommodations for families. So if they're homeless, if there's a change in their employment status where they once could supervise but now they can't, or any type of supervision hardship that may come up in a family situation. If there's an academic decline, that's a concern for a lot of us, for kids aren't in our buildings. that we're concerned about that could be initiated by either a parent or the school if the parent, so chooses to allow us to bring them back to brick and mortar. Any special needs situation or LEP status situation changes, or just a need in a 504 plan to, if at all possible, to bring them back to brick and mortar. There'd be a waiver process that would take up to about a week to process. The principal would give this form to or have a parent complete it and evaluate the particular parent situation. And then if it's denied, there is a appeal process through the regional office that would be allowed. Basically, what we're trying to do is avoid any of those big influxes one way or the other, but still trying to work with each and every family based on unique circumstances that may come up. So, and we're seeing in most of the districts have gone to a more permanent piece, has helped them better stabilize a number of the issues that we discussed. So basically that's it. Questions that you may have regarding the parents locking in their choice.
Just to confirm, this waiver process would be whether you're going from distance to brick and mortar or brick and mortar back to distance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for a school center, it's a lot easier to go back to distance, but maybe not in all situations, right?
Right.
But yes. So it would be for either, in short. Laura, anything you're hearing on social media about this?
I've heard concern about, some people, they have their minds set up. They don't need, they're fine with the deadline. And there are other people who are struggling with it because they don't see a good answer. They see the difficulties. Their kid might be currently distance learning, and they see the difficulties that have existed now that there's simultaneous instruction, and that it does lead me to a different question, which is, have you looked at classes which are doing these? Well, I assume all classes are at this point doing the simultaneous instruction. And has there been some classes where students overall are performing worse now that they have moved back to simultaneous instruction, where perhaps those distance learners are being left behind as the rest of the students are in front of the teacher?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of PD, and as I go to schools each week, teachers getting better and better at the simultaneous teaching. Again, is it ideal? No, it's not. However,
it was just as an administrator. I mean, I know there is so much on everyone's plate at this point, but has someone taken a look at and said, okay, I've got in this classroom, I've got 6 kids in person and they are getting A's and B's. And then I've got 10 kids in distance learning and they're getting D's and F's. What do we need to do? Has anyone looked at it from that type of perspective?
Not that I'm aware. I mean, I don't think we've taken that type of a look. No. Or that type of a lens at it. And I don't think.
I don't know that it would be useful right now because you really need everyone to make their choice. And to go from it from that perspective, but.
Yeah, I think in general, there's some kids that I think are struggling distance that we wish would have brick and mortar. But again, there's families out there that are scared and concerned, and are so choosing to stay in distance learning for a variety of reasons, whatever their household,
Right.
circumstances bring up.
Charmaine.
Thank you. I have a question. Are we doing anything to better prepare your substitutes for that simultaneous learning? Because what I have been seeing and observing is that the substitutes when a teacher is absent for whatever reason, the substitute is taking the kids that are in distance learning and preparing those children, and the actual virtual learning or distance learning, the virtual learning children are placed in another classroom with maybe a more experienced teacher to whatever extent. But what is also happening is that teacher may be behind, maybe advanced. So it's a little distracting and frustrating for that teacher, because the students that she received from Mr. Oswald's class, because Mr. Oswald is out, those virtual students are not where her children are. So she can't keep those children engaged. So they're already behind, and they're falling further behind because she's trying to manage her classroom, and they're on her, they're already either advanced or behind, whichever one. But what are we doing to better prepare our substitutes to be able to simultaneously teach? Because they are the ones that's kind of holding it down while we have this chaos that we're kind of trying to fix right now, right? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So Dr. Sheffield, I don't know if you want to jump in, but I know we've done training before substitutes.
Well, Ms. Poston, when we opened up training back on July 6th, for our teachers, all of our substitutes, and I think there was about 2,300 of them, those substitutes also had the opportunity to participate in the same training that we were providing for our teachers, which we tend not to do. But we knew that this year was just going to be different. So from henceforth, so any sub that was coming on now with HR, those substitutes must go through that PD piece in which we provided from teaching and learning over the summer. Now, is that the answer? And to say that because they did this training and they may be coming in as brand new subs, that they're going to be able to navigate in this distance space as efficient as someone that's been doing this on a daily basis? And absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's why it was important for us that when we started and when we went out to brick and mortar, that we took, I think, Keith, we had about 80 of our staff members from district to where we had those staff members out for the first and the second week of schools to try to eliminate having substitutes in the room, in classes, to where giving principals an opportunity to fill those holes that they may have had within their buildings, because we knew that there were going to be what you're experiencing now in regards to the situation with the subs and them having the lack of understanding in terms of navigating in that virtual space. But because we are running two different platforms, we're running, distance learning and we're running brick and mortar. Distance learning, as I was telling everyone, they will say, well, distance learning is running fine. You guys are up and running with distance learning. It's not the distance learning now, it's getting that instructional piece right. Well, guess what? Distance learning is not running by itself. It's actually, our curriculum specialists, resource teachers, and people that are behind the scene that you don't see, that are the ones that are writing those lessons, that are doing the videotaping. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the POMS Academy, which is our version of the Khan Academy that we're using to reinforce teaching and learning as it pertains to the enrichment, the enrichment and remediation of those content standards. But that's all of the staff that was from curriculum. So I had to pull back my staff from curriculum that I had out in the schools those first 2 weeks to come back and keep distance learning up and running. Am I making sense?
Yes, you're making sense. I don't think it was necessarily that the substitutes couldn't do the job or couldn't even experience it. It's that some of the schools are not even given that option to substitutes. They're saying you're just going to deal with the brick and mortar students, and we'll take care of the other students. And then when the teacher come back, this is what the teachers are getting. When the teachers come back, her kids that are either in brick and mortar, or it could be vice versa. The students that are in brick and mortar are advanced than the students that are that were virtual with the other classroom. Does that make sense? It's not necessarily that the student, the substitute doesn't want it. It's a decision that's made locally at the schools. That the teachers do not want the substitutes teaching simultaneously.
Okay.
That's
So,
where
yeah,
that's what I'm hearing from teachers.
Okay.
Those were the concerns that teachers had.
So
Okay.
there's a lot of
I'm
different.
following you now. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Now I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
So-
that's the thing that, like, I mean, I don't know how, if that's something we're preparing the schools or how that's going. Honestly, you know, I've seen where substitutes do not have the ability to teach both of those kids. I'm a substitute, and I tell you, there's no way. If I
It's
can
a
have the
challenge.
option of
Yeah.
doing just brick and mortar,
Yeah.
I would just stick with brick and mortar. But I mean, if I had to do it, I would do it simultaneously. But I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Give me brick and mortar or virtual, one or the other. I can't do this college learning.
And that's what we're looking in this post. So that's what we're looking, and hopefully, and you know, as this, you know, as everything comes to an end, we're trying to stabilize. That's our primary focus in terms of working with each school individually to see how we can, as much as we can pair a remote teacher up with the remote students, then let's do that. And those students that are brick and mortar, can we pair them up with the brick and mortar teacher? That sounds realistic, right? To where, you know, that teacher can focus on their craft, the students are focused, and so forth, because we do have, you know, a large number of teachers for health reasons that do need that remote work access. So if indeed we can make that work through this process, that's what we want to do. To go back to, you know, I think it was Laura, and then I'm looking at Dr. Diaz's comment in the chat box here in regards to, have we taken a look in regards to how our students are performing, you know, brick and mortar versus distance learning? And, you know, and as we talk, you know, myself, as I talk with principal supervisors or principals that may call directly looking for support, because we are still providing supports to the school centers, it's in regards to, because they are seeing, you know, the vice versa in regards to, in some situations, and again, it all depends on, you know, it just depends on the student. But when principals are seeing to where their students, they have some that are brick and mortar that are indeed struggling. So how can we provide that additional support to those students? And that's where, you know, the resources and things that come out of this office, you know, and going into those classrooms, trying to do those one-on-one meetings or those small groups, that takes some hardcore monitoring from the principal, from the teacher, and all those adults on that campus to see where little Johnny may not be performing as well as he has been or would have done if he was indeed brick and mortar. And as we talk about this stabilization, you know, even those families that may have that may choose to where I want to stay brick and mortar, but it's our responsibility as a district. We get it. We understand in regards to what your health concerns and what your concerns are. But when we're looking at the data, student data, I think it's our responsibility to reach out with that family and have those conversations and talk about what it will look like or how could we better assist, you know, Johnny and Susie in whatever space they're in, because we see that regression that's taking place.
Thank you so much. I have one more question, if really quickly. Have we, or do we know the number of teachers? Have we assessed how many teachers will be returning or who are requesting to be out, who are currently out because they have a, not necessarily an underlying issue, but something that is, because from my understanding, there was 5 options that teachers could stay home, correct?
Keith is more on.
So it's not that they could stay home. So if they're applying for remote work, there was different categories.
Right, it was 5 of those?
5 of those, yes.
Right, 5 of those, okay.
Category 1's, you know, category 2 is the most common, which is some kind of medical issue with the employee themselves. So they're medically compromised. So they had to meet a certain criteria. I can tell you that what doesn't get out there, so a lot of districts aren't offering this, like Broward County, they're just doing ADA.
Right, and that's where I'm going. I'm kind of going at, have this district revisit those different categories because, from a standpoint of where I was in human resources, it was just mind blowing when that was even an option. And then to the point where a principal becomes the benefits office. I mean, the staff had a lot of options that is not a normal practice in a company, to say the least. But from a benefit standpoint, typically if you have an issue, whatever that issue is, you go through benefits, you explain your benefits and FMLA or whatever. I understand these are different times and it's COVID, but are we entertaining those other categories that are not necessarily common in the other districts? Will we be entertaining those other categories? Are they still on the table?
So as of right now, they're on the table, but only if a principal could make that accommodation for school-based personnel. So we've had over 2,300 school-based personnel apply for remote work for a variety of different categories. I mean, what I can share is what a lot of people don't realize, 515 of those were actually approved to the principal to make it work. So
what about the breakdown of the categories? How many teachers requested based on the breakdown of the categories? Do you guys have that number that can be
teachers versus like paraprofessional or something?
Predominantly teachers, like any instructional teaching, paraprofessional included. I mean, would you guys include them as instruction or?
No, Keith, I think she's referring to the 5 options, like are there data in regards to the percentage for each of the options?
Correct.
Yeah,
With respect
I
to
can tell you
teachers
that,
and anyone who has direct instructional time with the students.
Yeah, the majority are priority 2s with some sprinkled in of.
Well, if you said 2,300 was applied and only 500 was approved, those 530 or whatever is category 2s, because that's not majority.
Hang on, I'll tell you in a second.
For the second,
I have my dashboard. 410 of those are priority 2s.
okay, I think June is typing it in the group chat or something.
She's talking district-wide. I'm talking about just school-based, which she typed in.
But just so you know, there was 3,100 applications spread across all of our departments and all of our divisions.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about school-based.
That's fine.
So 410 were priority 2, 23 priority 3, 22 priority 4, and 13 priority 5. And so and again, depending on what a principal was able to accommodate or what the issue was, so they make that work. So in some situations, just the way their numbers rolled out, they wanted to make the accommodation because in many cases, there are some employees that are very scared and very concerned about their health and would otherwise not come back and would take a leave. So in some situations, if principals could have at least someone teaching the class, that they were going to try to make that work versus knowing the teacher shortage that we have at the same time. So it's not, you're muted.
When you're saying 23, is that 423 or is that 23 teachers?
So 410 were priority 2. So 410 are priority 2. That could have been, I don't have it broken down yet by instructional versus like a paraprofessional or.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
And then, but they're school-based.
School-based. So 410 is category 2. What was category 3?
23.
23 total.
23 total that were approved.
That were approved. Out of the 410, 23 were approved.
Out of the entire 515, 410 were priority 2, 23 were priority 3, 22 were priority 4, and 13 were priority 5.
Well, that doesn't include 20. That doesn't add up to 2,300 cases.
No.
Those are only the ones that are approved.
Oh, okay. Just approved.
Not approved. I'd have to look at
Got
something
it.
else there. That,
I see where you're going. Okay.
Just those that were approved.
Okay.
Dr. Diaz?
Thank you.
You're muted, Dr. Diaz. You're still muted.
If you mouse over the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see the controls.
Okay.
There
Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So what was the number not approved?
Are you talking about just school-based? Because there's a lot of different numbers out here.
School-based.
515 were approved out of 2,312.
So what happens to the remainder who were not approved?
They're in a
Take a
whole,
leave.
yeah, so they could go to one of the other options and take a leave. Some are taking leaves, or some have chosen just to come back to work.
Okay. Yeah, I was just want to make a comment on the question or the point I put in the chat box. When this COVID is all said and done, we're now talking about processes and how to work out a process to deal with a COVID situation, which is quite understandable. But when this is all said and done, people are going to want to know something about product. And one of the questions that's going to be asked is what kind of quality did students get if they were virtual versus face-to-face? And in light of the fact that we've never had a laboratory to compare those two, I think it might be a good idea for the district to start lining up an answer to that question well in advance. Because if that question is posed either now or later, I don't know how we would answer it. I mean, we would all hope that there would be no significant difference between the two cohorts, but we can't say that for a fact unless we have something to base it on.
I would add to that, if we're doing that analysis, which I think is a great idea, would be to take a look at the classes where simultaneous teaching is happening versus the classes where a teacher can be focused on face-to-face or focusing on distance learning. And that should be a factor that's taken into that analysis as well.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you so much.
And again, there's a lot of things we're looking at right now. We're just dealing with the fires that are going on in schools. So please understand that we got to prioritize right now.
Understood, but it just might help answer questions in the future and in the very near future. Because if you look at this and you could then turn to the community and say, I know in January you need to make a decision, but this is what we have seen academically for our students. That might play a factor into parents' minds when they're making these decisions.
Yeah, let me add to that. Right now, when parents are being asked to make those decisions, they're probably making those decisions largely on their concerns about health, one way or the other. They really don't have the background or the information to weigh academic considerations into those decisions. Now, it may be probably is not enough time between now and the deadline in January to provide them with that information. But at some point, it seems to me that the responsible thing to do is to have that information so that we can answer those questions with some degree of confidence.
And I have a feeling that there are some administrators who have already noticed that, yes, the students in this particular teacher's class are not getting the types of grades either that the students used to get, or that the students who, and they're distance learning now, versus the students who are now face-to-face in that same teacher's classroom. I could tell you a friend of mine had a conversation with an administrator about exactly that situation. And the administrator was already familiar with the concept that the kids who were distance learning in that class were getting, I think, D's and F's. And that was not the case for those students in the past, nor for those students who were face-to-face. But I thought that that could be something that's helpful to look at. It could also help drive some of the professional development that's needed as these decisions are made. And that's why I brought it up. So, and I understand there are a lot of fires. I think this is one of those that's growing. I do have a different question, which has to do with, and I understand ideally once we have this stabilization, that there will be an opportunity to have a remote teacher teaching distance learners and a person in the school teaching face-to-face and have that separated out. Has there been consideration as to how that will work for, Carlos, I think if you could mute, there'd be less of an echo.
Okay, hold on.
Oh no, we lost him completely. Well, hopefully he will come back.
Yeah.
So what I was saying was, so if we have a teacher who is the only teacher in that school, in high school, teaching that particular subject, how will this be addressed come these decisions for distance versus in-person learning? Is there going to be an opportunity, for example, if you've got, how many high schools do we have? Like
23 comprehensive.
23, okay. So if we have 20 teachers who are teaching AP Physics, are we considering that, and there aren't any other AP Physics teachers in that school, that if we have 10 of those teachers who are coming back remotely, or could we have the 10 in person, 10 remotely? Would those 10 remotes teachers have students from multiple schools? Did that make sense?
I'm not sure I'm following you, but you're talking about like a centralized processing?
Somehow, because if you've got, let's say, a student who wants or needs, let's say for medical reasons, needs to remain as a remote learner. So they have health issues that mean that this is an important decision for them to do. So
we've talked about it. Logistically, there's many challenges behind it. So right now we're trying to work at the school level to make it work, versus trying to master up a centralized process. Pinellas is trying to do this, and they've ran into a lot of challenges with it, especially when kids want to come and go. If we basically would need a long-term commitment, that you're committing this basically for the year to stay in distance learning, to make something like that work, versus the options to change, if that makes sense.
got it. So
Yes, it's been discussed. It's been, it's not that it's out. We're still looking at it. All options are good options to look at.
Until they're not. So,
yeah.
So is there a possibility that maybe if that centralized process is not workable, is there a possibility that the teachers where there's only one teacher per subject in that school, could there be some extra support given to that classroom such that there can be help to make the simultaneous teaching a better experience for all involved?
Oh, yeah, we're doing that all the time right now for those teachers who need support. We put, Dr. Sheffield's office put out some technical and pedagogical support documents, as well as utilizing our trailblazers to help other teachers, PLCs. I mean, some of the stuff that these teachers are doing is just incredible. What I've seen in classrooms, making that work. So it's a matter of those teachers are just rocking and rolling with simultaneous teaching and sharing that. And again, that takes practice and work, but absolutely.
But I think the reality of it is, and which is a hard conversation, is that when we're down 6,000 plus students, and we are going through, starting tomorrow, the 11-day adjustments periods. So, we talked earlier in regards to the classes with the substitutes and so forth. And, what we're beginning to see now is that, and this is another reason for the stabilization, is being down that many students, that being down over 6,000 plus students talks in regards to looking at staff and so forth. So that's a bigger part of, the conversation and the kind of support and what this process will look like. And I think we start those adjustments tomorrow, right, Keith? Meeting with our principals.
Yeah, start getting ahead of it.
Thank you.
Dr. Sheffield, we're at time. I don't know. Well, we don't have a quorum for this.
I do appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
So now we're at 7:02. So
I was just going to.
You don't have to make a motion. There's no
motion. No one can vote on it. Should we talk about the showcase? Well, the showcase of schools is coming up in a couple weeks, right?
yes, there's coming up, and they both will be over with by the time of our next meeting. So, and they're both big events that we tend to have each year, which is our virtual, which is our showcase of schools that we normally have at the South Florida Fairgrounds. Actually would have been next week, where we're showcasing our over 300 plus, magnet programs and career academies and so forth. And then the following night at the fairground is where we would have our college fair. We have our college fair at the fairgrounds, and we also do a big college fair there at the convention center, where many of our students are provided, thousands and thousands of dollars. I should say millions of dollars in scholarships. And that's how many of our students are able to go on to post-secondary. And, and I'm sure it breaks everyone's heart on here this evening to just hear that, those two big experiences, from the college fair that we would have immediately after our virtual of our showcase at school, and then there at the convention center, we're not able to have this year, but we are doing both events virtually. We're just, determined to try to give our students and our families, some experiences and at least some opportunities that will yield some great results for them, and not just allow COVID to just take all these experiences away from them. So I shared my screen here. Jay is just going to go real quick around the virtual showcase of schools that's going to be launching on October the 20th. Jay.
Sure thing, Doc. I'll be brief. The one you hit on the biggest piece. We have nearly 15,000 stakeholders that converge on the showcase of schools. And that won't be happening this year, but what will be happening is the incredible things taking place on our campuses, and then making sure our community knows about all those awesome choice and career academies. It's been a collaboration with communications, IT, and our choice department. It launches October 20th, and a key piece for, I think, this team is to be mindful that, yes, we have 300 plus choice programs, but we're taking a hard step and initiative and making sure that we're marketing all of our district schools in this process. Because I think we all believe that great things are happening on every district-wide campus here in Palm Beach County. And we want to make sure that that SAC boundaries school gets kind of its right and due promotion along with the choice program. So that's actually a new feature as part of this platform. I don't know if we're going to go through all the slides, Dr. Sheffield, but I do think that the biggest piece is that we're taking notice and attention just in the title alone, Innovate Your World. So this gives a family or a stakeholder an opportunity to click on, see the school options, and then go through each program, whether it's Alexander Dreyfus or Acreage Pines. You'll click on it, you'll find your school, and like I said, it'll take you to the SAC boundaried school first. That's who you're identified with, technically home school. Then it goes into all of your choice options. Then you can participate in a virtual open house, and some of our schools are actually opening up their doors in small cadres of students to have an open house or a virtual open house. And then last step is November 4th, when we open up the application, that you'll actually be able to apply online. This is kind of what the format will look like. We've chosen Forest Hill, but you'll see not only choice programs, but in-house programs. The principal is going to populate her welcome message, any transportation, or even some contact us. We're launching a Facebook Live on October 20th with myself, Dr. Johnson, who's the director of choice. This is kind of some of the school information aspects that'll be another piece of the package when you click on it. So choice, school, and then the next one kind of shows our open house dates. We've already started to populate what the open house dates are across our district. And I think the last slide we have on here today is the mobile device. So anyone can use this. For any of you that have tried to use something outside of a mobile device viewer, you know that it gets all messed up and it's hard to see. This will work on any tablet or iPhone, which was a big step for us in IT. And really, I think it's not as good as in person, but I think it's the best that we can do. And I definitely think it'll be an awesome product for our stakeholders and really a win for Palm Beach County.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. And again, that was, just as we're getting ready to launch our virtual choice programs. And then the next part, that's going to be the big launch on, actually, the big night will be October 21st, which is our virtual college and career night. And, communications will be broadcasting, navigating all these pieces. And on the 21st, we're actually in partnership with Broward County. The two counties came together, and these are going to be all of our, state schools here in Florida. We're going to see how this goes virtually on the 21st. And if all goes well, we would then like to continue in bringing on Miami-Dade. Would like to join Palm Beach and Broward, to where we would then look and taking this further outside of the state of Florida to give our students additional opportunities and looking at post-secondary opportunities. But again, this all started back on October 5th, where we are just showcasing all the different state universities, and then leading up to, and you probably are seeing a lot of this if you're all through social media or what have you, and then leading up to our big virtual night for our juniors and seniors. But, all students are encouraged to join us on the 21st. Nothing is as great as being in person, for these two big events, but we cannot do it. But we wanted to at least give it an attempt to bring these experiences to our students virtually.
I want to thank you for that. I think that it's wonderful that you all are undertaking this in such a fashion to try to make it as accessible as possible for our students, especially during this difficult time. So thank you all for all the efforts you're putting in for all of this.
You're welcome. And, we had we're doing as much as we can, in this virtual space, because this past Thursday, on the 8th, actually, this past Thursday, Patricia Trejo and the team over with our, with the Latino Studies, they put on actually a Hispanic Heritage Month that, just recently, it's going on or what have you. And put on an awesome virtual showcase there. And, it's something that we would have had in an open space. But again, we're not able to do these things. And I had an opportunity. I had 2 meetings going on. But I tell you, just logging in and just having that virtual experience with the group and to see the work that, that they did. And we had one of our speakers for our new school board member that will be joining us that are replacing, Mr. Shaw. She was able to join us, and it was just an awesome evening. And I think it was another speaker was Jose Hernandez, one of our former astronauts from NASA. And it was just a great, event virtually. And one thing that we've learned from this whole COVID experience, I tell you, some things that we have learned is I think we've picked up to where we would not go back. And one for me is the meeting, seeing that the time that I can save in some of these virtual meetings and what I used to drive to take an hour or two to drive and the time and so forth. But we're doing our best. It's not perfect, but we're trying to just continue with the experiences for our students and the community at large.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Can you repeat the date and time for the college fair and the showcase again? I'm sorry, I heard October 20th and 21st. But
yes, the 20th and the 20th and the 21st.
And what time is it?
And the 21st. And the virtual college information night on the 21st is from 4 to 8. 4 to 8. And then if you go to our website, communications website, all that information will be there.
Thank you.
The link and everything for it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming online during the holiday day, and we'll see you all next month. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.